My dear countrymen, some states have lost their liberty by particular accidents, but this calamity is generally owing to the decay of virtue. A people is traveling fast to destruction when individuals consider their interests as distinct from those of the public. Such notions are fatal to their country and to themselves. Yet how many are there so weak and sordid as to think they perform all the offices of life if they earnestly endeavor to increase their own wealth, power, and credit, without the least regard for the society under the protection of which they live, who, if they can make an immediate profit to themselves by lending their assistance to those whose projects plainly tend to the injury of their country, rejoice in their dexterity, and believe themselves entitled to the character of able politicians. Miserable men, of whom it is hard to say whether they ought to be most the objects of pity or contempt. But those opinions are certainly as detestable as their practices are destructive. Though I always reflect with a high pleasure on the integrity and understanding of my countrymen, which, joined with a pure and humble devotion to the great and gracious Author of every blessing they enjoy, will, I hope, ensure to them and their posterity all temporal and eternal happiness. Yet when I consider that in every age and country there have been bad men, my heart at this threatening period is so full of apprehension as not to permit me to believe, but that there may be some on this continent against whom you ought to be upon your guard, men who either hold or expect to hold certain advantages by setting examples of servility to their countrymen. Men who, trained to the employment or self-taught by a natural versatility of genius, serve as decoys for drawing the innocent and unwary into snares. It is not to be doubted but that such men will diligently bestir themselves on this and every like occasion to spread the infection of their meanness as far as they can. On the plans they have adopted, this is their course. This is the method to recommend themselves to their patrons. From them we shall learn how pleasant and profitable a thing it is to be for our submissive behavior well spoken of at St. James or St. Stephen's, at Guildhall, or the Royal Exchange. Specious fallacies will be dressed up with all the arts of delusion, to persuade one colony to distinguish herself from another by unbecoming condescensions, which will serve the ambitious purposes of great men at home, and therefore will be thought by them to entitle their assistance in obtaining them to considerable rewards. Our fears will be excited. Our hopes will be awakened. It will be insinuated to us with a plausible affectation of wisdom and concern how prudent it is to please the powerful, how dangerous to provoke them, and then comes in the perpetual incantation that freezes up every generous purpose of the soul in cold, inactive expectation, that if there is any request to be made, compliance will obtain a favorable attention. Our vigilance and our union are success and safety. Our negligence and our division are distress and death. They are worse. They are shame and slavery. let us equally shun the benumbing stillness of overweening sloth, and the feverish activity of that ill-informed zeal, which busies itself in maintaining little, mean, and narrow opinions. Let us, with a truly wise generosity and charity, banish and discourage all illiberal distinctions which may arise from differences in situation, forms of government, or modes of religion. Let us consider ourselves as men, free men, Christian free men, separated from the rest of the world and firmly bound together by the same rights, interests, and dangers. Let these keep our attention inflexibly fixed on the great objects which we must continually regard in order to preserve those rights, to promote those interests, and to avert those dangers. Let these truths be indelibly impressed on our minds, that we cannot be happy without being free, that we cannot be free without being secure in our property, that we cannot be secure in our property if, without our consent, others may, as by right, take it away, that taxes imposed on us by Parliament do thus take it away, that duties laid for the sole purpose of raising money are taxes, that attempts to lay such duties should be instantly and firmly opposed, that this opposition can never be effectual unless it is the united effort of these provinces, that therefore benevolence of temper towards each other and unanimity of counsels are essential to the welfare of the whole, and lastly, that for this reason every man amongst us who in any manner would encourage either dissension, diffidence, or indifference between these colonies is an enemy to himself and to his country. The belief of these truths, I verily think, my countrymen, is indispensably necessary to your happiness. I beseech you, therefore, teach them diligently unto your children, and talk of them when you sit in your houses, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. What have these colonies to ask while they continue free? Or what have they to dread but insidious attempts to subvert their freedom? Their prosperity does not depend on ministerial favors doled out to particular provinces. They form one political body of which each colony is a member. Their happiness is founded on their constitution and is to be promoted by preserving that constitution in unabated vigor throughout every part. A spot, a speck of decay, however small the limb on which it appears, and however remote it may seem from the vitals, should be alarming. We have all the rights requisite for our prosperity. The legal authority of Great Britain may indeed lay hard restrictions upon us, but like the spear of Telephus, it will cure as well as wound. Her unkindness will instruct and compel us, after some time, to discover in our industry and frugality surprising remedies, if our rights continue unviolated. For as long as the products of our labor and the rewards of our care can properly be called our own, so long it will be worth our while to be industrious and frugal. But if when we plow, sow, reap, gather, and thresh, we find that we plow, sow, reap, gather, and thresh for others, whose pleasure is to be the sole limitation how much they shall take and how much they shall leave, why should we repeat the unprofitable toil. Horses and oxen are content with that portion of the fruits of their work which their owners assign them, in order to keep them strong enough to raise successive crops. But even these beasts will not submit to draw for their masters until they are subdued by whips and goads.